Well, hello. Welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us today. Dave Tice is an English-born Australian singer, songwriter, and guitarist who fronted several hard rock bands during his career. As a teenager during the 60s, Dave joined the Brisbane bands The Odd Colors and Strange Brew. In 1968, he co-founded the band Head with bass player Peter Wells, and after a move to Sydney in 1970, the band changed its name to Buffalo. From 1971 to 1977, the band released 5 albums worth of material. A couple of albums would be banned by some outlets due to the obscene cover art, but I'm sure this only served to stoke the fire under the fans and helped aid in the promotion of the band. Buffalo had a loyal following and toured with heavyweights like Black Sabbath, Slade, and Status Quo. After returning to England in the late 70s, Dave would front the Count Bishops, an R&B proto-punk band. Moving back to Australia in 1984, Mr. Tice has toured and played live gigs around the country, including his own band and with Buffalo Revisited. Well, welcome, Dave.
Nice to meet you, Greg. You know, we've already had a little chat before you pushed the record button there, and we've discovered that we can trust each other. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's nice to speak to somebody so far away as well. You know, wonderful technology we have.
Yes, it is. And I'm glad that we don't have any kind of lag on those 15 hours too. Could you imagine that?
Wow.
You talk and then it finally gets to me a few minutes later. That would be something. Take us back to the beginning. You were born in London, right?
Yes, yeah, in a place called Lewisham, actually.
Okay, all right.
I was born on Christmas Day, and apparently I interrupted the doctor's Christmas lunch.
You weren't born in a manger by any chance?
Almost, but not quite.
Almost, okay. Well, you're probably too young to remember London or England. How about any early memories of Australia when you relocated there?
Well, just to correct you there, I didn't come to Australia until I was 13. So I spent my formative years in England. But my family left London when I was 2 years old. My father, who'd served briefly at the end of the Second World War, returned to London and found it very difficult to find work in London, which is where he was born. Got married, and I was born, and at that point the whole 3 of us were in a spare room at my grandparents' place. So my father, unable to find work in London, took a job as a farmhand in Lincolnshire, which is a couple of hours north of London, and very rural area. So I grew up really in close to a town called Spalding. But my father worked on the farm, and I did my early schooling there. Ended up gaining a scholarship to grammar school in Spalding, where I spent about 1.5 years before my father went through the process of becoming a migrant, what we call a 10-pound POM. Okay, in those days, the Australian government was encouraging migration from England and other European countries, and they would pay the costs for the families to come to Australia. My parents, it cost them £10 each, and myself and my 2 brothers at that stage, it cost them nothing. So that's why we were called 10-pound POMs, because we came to Australia, landed in a migrant hostel up near Brisbane, where I finished my schooling, and I left school at 15, and I sort of got my school certificate. I was put a year ahead of my own age group, because of the grammar school education I'd had over in England. I was well ahead, academically, I suppose. And I was able to leave school when I was 15, and I was already at that point decided that my main interest was going to be anything that put me on a stage and had girls screaming at me. I thought that was a job for me.
Right. Right. Yeah. Do you were either one of your parents musically inclined at all?
Uh, no, not particularly. I have a cousin who was rather good on the piano accordion. Although, I must say that my parents never had very much money. When I think back, it surprises me that they were able to raise and support three growing boys. Because a farm labourer's um, wage wasn't particularly high, and especially back there in the 50s. I was born in 1950, uh, but somehow they did manage to buy a small gramophone, kind of, that there's a record player for those of you.
Yeah.
And they had a small number of singles. I remember, I don't know if you've ever heard of a guy called Frank Highfield.
Oh yes, he just
Yeah,
passed away. He just passed away recently.
Uh, um, I think so, but
Yeah,
he was an Australian, believe it or not. He's
right.
Australian.
But he made it big in
I
England.
remember you.
He made it big in England. He's from Australia, but yeah, I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
you're right. You're right. He was
And
he was kind of
the
a
other bloke,
yodeler. Yeah,
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 yeah. Well,
yeah.
the other bloke that my parents had records of was an American guy.
Yes.
I think his name was Jim Reeves.
Oh, Jim, I love Jim Reeves. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, and I remember those kind of records being played in the house, and of course we had a little radio that you know used to tune into the BBC
yes,
radio.
yes,
But
yes. Frank passed away May 18th.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
in May in Doral. How far is Doral from you?
Dural, Dural,
Dural,
Dural, we
Dural.
pronounce it. Yeah, it's
Okay,
it's
Dural.
an outer it's an outer suburb of Sydney. Okay,
Okay,
Sydney is where I live, but
okay.
Dural is probably maybe an hour drive from where I am. I'm more sort of close to the inner city. He lives out there where there, or used to live out there where there's trees and kookaburras and
Yeah, Kookaburra. Yeah.
and not too many muggers on the streets.
Yes. Oh, but Jim Reeves, that velvety voice of his. Oh,
Yeah, you're great, Uh, put your sweet lips a little closer to the
to the phone.
phone.
Yeah, we can sing that one.
And yet, from that sort of small, rather middle of the road grounding, I ended up playing rock music, and really playing in a band that was in Australia with Buffalo. We were certainly the outcasts and the bad boys.
Yes, yes. Well, talk about your how your voice you begin to train your voice to sing in that kind of a vein, that kind of hard rock.
Well,
Uh,
the only training I really had to do that was a complete belief in myself.
okay. Well,
And,
there you go. There you go.
and you can talk about any kind of training or teaching or blah blah blah, but at the core, that is the difference. I never thought to myself, but I'll tell you something. When I was at grammar school in England, we used to have a part of the school day would be taken up by what you used to call elocution. Okay, yeah, right, and appreciation for music and things like that. And we used to have class singing, and and when I was 13, my voice started to break, and the teacher that used to take that class stopped the singing part the way through and said, "Tice, you can stop singing, thank you very much." They didn't want to hear me because my voice was so all over the place.
Can I help you?
But
Yeah.
by all rights, I should never have become a singer. Okay, but I initially started out in bands up in Brisbane with the idea that I was going to be a guitar player. Okay, and of course I can play a bit of guitar. I'm not really a guitar player, but I can play a bit of guitar. And the only reason I became a singer was because the first real gig that I ever did with the first band we formed, which was myself and Pete Wells and a couple of other guys. That band was called Strange Brew. Now,
Straight Brew. Yeah.
stolen from Cream, okay?
Cream, right. I figured that.
Yeah, but we used to jam away and try to learn how to play music in a garage in one of the suburbs of Brisbane. And some of the local kids used to wander by and hear us banging away there, making this horrible noise. So we got invited to play at somebody's 16th birthday party in a backyard. Okay. And at that time, I was supposedly the lead guitar player, and we had a singer. So we went to the gig, set up in the backyard, and tuned our instruments. And I turned around, and the singer was nowhere to be seen. Even though we were playing in the backyard, he got stage fright and ran away.
Cold feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there we were with our instruments ready to go. And everybody looked around at each other and, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And I said, well, we can't just run away with the tails between our legs, guys. We've got to at least try and do something. And they said, well, we haven't got a singer. And I said, well, okay, I'll do it. And that's how I became a singer. Okay.
Okay.
And yeah,
singer
I'm a
by
singer
default. Singer
by default. That's right. Yes. and that's is the way that you start a 60-year career in music.
Right. Well, doing these interviews, I hear that about people that were classically trained or took piano or guitar lessons or whatever. Very soon they outgrow that.
Yes.
The strict rigmarole and training, and they want to do their own thing. They want to spread their wings, go beyond that. So I think it may be good a little bit, but eventually you want to kind of branch out and do your own thing. And
well, I think we all have, we all have a voice. We must have a voice, otherwise we won't be able to talk to each other. And the difference between somebody who's a singer, for instance, really is the confidence to get up and do it. And that's the bottom line. Look, when I was that age, the time we were just talking about, I had complete faith in myself.
Right.
Nowadays, I've lost much of that.
Right.
You start with this arrogant belief in yourself.
Right.
If they can do it, well, bloody hell, I can do it.
Right.
And that's the way it started.
Yeah, I'm deathly afraid of public speaking. And I know that's one of the biggest fears, for people. But being up in front of a crowd, I can't do that. I can do this. I can do this.
Yes.
But to one-on-one, that kind of thing. But to be in front of a lot of people now.
Well, the truth of them, like, I must be honest with you here, and I prefer honesty anyway. I'm not naturally an outgoing. I'm not an extrovert normally. Okay, within me beats the heart of an introvert. Okay, at a party, I'm more likely to be the bloke sitting in the corner drinking a beer quietly rather than dancing around and romancing every woman in the room. That's not me. But I can get up in front of 30,000 people quite happily. Okay, it doesn't worry me because in many ways that's a crowd, an audience is a completely different animal. That's not a human being out there. It is human beings, but it's not a human being.
Not a. Right.
There's a whole different psychology here, and I only know this because that's the way I've lived. I never started out with that thought in my mind.
Yeah.
I started out, as I said, believing that I could do it, and so I did it. And it never ceases to amaze me, even now, that people accept that I can do it.
That you can do. I think that's so true, and I think if it's something that you love, that's something that's in here. That becomes a part of your spirit and your soul, and it's a calling. It's a calling. I was just talking to a friend the other day about, I've had a couple of sales jobs before in the past, working for a corporation, and I hated it. I
yeah,
hated it when I had to
yeah,
sell their products and they forced me to cold call people and that kind of stuff. But you know what? Sending out these, reaching out to people through Messenger, Facebook, I enjoy that. It's
yes,
because
yeah,
it's something that I like, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, so it's the same, it's a similar kind of thing. I think I can equate it to that, that if it's something
Well,
that you really enjoy,
you
it
know,
becomes easier,
the,
easier.
in many ways, the whole way that we are educated uh, is against that idea. The
Right,
idea that we each have individual talents. Everybody has a talent. It may not be something like music or sculpting or painting, but we all have a talent. And
right,
the education system is all about making us all fit into the very specific roles. Okay, and we are not all suited to that.
no,
Now,
very
now
true.
that's a terrible failing in education that they refuse in many ways to recognise that it's better to encourage those individual talents and how much more it would enrich the whole human experience than to force us all to be drones in factories or salesmen or whatever it happens
Right,
to be. What a
right,
lot of bullshit that is. That's against humanity, man. That is
right, right.
against humanity.
You know,
You know?
and another thing, and we'll get back on the music, but about like let's say journalism. Let's say doing what I do. Some people have asked, "Do you have journalism degree? You have experience in that?" No, I don't. I wanted to be a disc jockey at one point. And I knocked on so many doors, and they were all closed. Everybody wanted me. Well, do you have a broadcast degree? Did you get schooling for this? You know,
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
finally got to the point where I said, like, screw that. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to be bogged down with that, that education process. A lot of times, all that does is discourages people. And I think
Yes.
that's part of the process to wear people down. It's like, okay, well, only a few are going to rise to the top, because others are going to get tired of it, the struggle and give up. And to me, it's like, screw that. I don't need the system's permission or society's permission to do this. You know what I
No,
mean?
well, you don't. You
I
don't.
don't
You
need a
just
degree to do this,
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
That's right. If you believe in yourself enough and
right,
you have the passion, that's
right. The
you,
passion.
and the thing about it is that you may fail, right?
Right,
But this is the chance we all take, and better to fail doing something you love and still be able to love it than to succeed in something that you hate. You
that you
know,
hate.
look, I have learned very much, very, very from experience that being a musician, unless you are one of a very, very select few, is not a very profitable enterprise. Okay,
Right. No, it's not.
and in fact, there have been many times when whether I was going to eat regularly this week or not was a very close call. Okay,
Right.
somehow I've always managed to. But one thing I do know, and I really appreciate, is that the vast majority of the human race appreciate music, okay?
Yes.
And they appreciate the people that play music. Many of them wish that they could do it themselves and they can't. But there are people out there who have no musical talent that will go out of their way to help a musician, okay? And that is a really wonderful thing. It sustains me in many ways. Nowadays I'm not in the position where I have to scrounge through rubbish bins for potato peelings to make soup. Okay, I have a
Right.
roof over my head, and I have my toys around me.
Yeah.
But that's the result of a lifetime doing what I do. Uh,
Right.
so,
Once,
but
once you're,
without the
yeah,
support of other
yeah,
people, I have
yeah.
no life. I have no profession. I have nothing.
Right.
You know.
Right. We need each other, that's the thing, it's like, and once you're bitten by that bug as a musician, that you've got to live that life. It's got to come
No
out.
escape. There's no
Yeah,
escape, man.
that's right. That's
This is
right.
no. We may have spent a lot of time rehearsing, but this is no rehearsal.
It's a lifelong process. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
that's right.
You know,
And it's wonderful. I mean, I love it. I still love it. I mean, the truth is that if there was never a fee to be made from playing music, I would still be playing music. You
Right.
know,
Exactly.
I appreciate getting a fee for doing it. I love to get, and the bigger the fee, the better I feel.
Exactly.
But that's not the point. You know, that's just a result of it. That's all it is. You know.
That's right. That's right. I don't get a dime from doing these, you know. Eventually I like to monetize, and look into that. But I did it, because I love it, like the same kind of thing, because I wanted to reach out to you guys, hear your stories, and share
Yeah.
that with everyone else, So it's the same kind, it's on similar ground, but it's a calling. It's definitely a calling, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyway, let's get back to the first album.
Music.
Yeah, back to music again. Let's circle the let's circle the wagons back around. Okay.
Okay, I'm
To
with you. I'm ready. I'm ready. Hit me, brother. Hit me.
uh, 1972's Dead Forever has the reputation as Australia's first heavy metal album. You
Yeah.
think that's appropriate?
Well, I personally don't make those kind of judgments. I leave that to other people to make. Okay,
Yeah.
because you know, there's some sort of illusion that we did that with some kind of purpose in mind. We set out to make a specific kind of record, but no, that's not what we did. We just did what came naturally to us, you know, and that's been true pretty much through my whole career. I do what comes naturally. I don't really say, right, well, we're going to put together a heavy rock band now, and we're going to make, all this whole really noisy music and create a bit of a controversy and make all the older people hate it. Oh no, we didn't do that. We weren't thinking to ourselves we're breaking new ground or anything like that. We just did what came naturally. Now,
Right.
we are all products of our influences, Greg. We can't escape those things.
That's true.
Personally, Pete Wells and I, who were the founding members of Buffalo, Pete has always been a great influence on my life. Okay, Pete is, God love him, he's gone too soon, way too soon. But we started out with all the plans that we had was to be a blues band. That's all. We love Paul Butterfield. My favorite music is still made by dead black guys. Okay, Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, Willie Dixon, Little Walter, all those names. Those are the things that I listen to. Those were the things that Pete and I were listening to when we could get them in Australia, which was not easy at that time. Those are the things that we listened to. We spent hours in garages trying to bang out, there are two trains running, walking blues and all that sort of business, I must tell you that I think that we got pretty good at it, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that Buffalo became what it was when Pete and I moved to Sydney with a band which is called Head at that time as a blues band. We hit Sydney and struggled to get a gig, man. Nobody wanted to know us. Okay, nobody wanted to know us, so we got jobs, and our guitar player didn't get a job. He relied on us to support him, which we got tired of very quickly, and we fired him. And then the drummer got homesick and wanted to go back to his girlfriend in Brisbane, so he left. So there was me and Pete, and we auditioned to get a guitar player. Found a guy. We worked in a factory for a while, Pete and I, and one of the guys that was there was a drummer. So we had a drummer. We found a drummer. Okay, and that was Paul Balby, and the guy that we came across for the guitar player was John Baxter. So we jammed with him as a bit of an audition in a cellar in a place called Darlinghurst in Sydney, so we're jamming away, and Pete and I, as I say, and we were thinking going to be a blues band, and we did this for a while, and it didn't seem to be coming out as blues. So Pete and I went outside, have a cigarette, and a bit of a chat, and I said, Pete, this guy, he can't play blues, man, you know. And Pete said, yeah. He said, I don't know what he's doing, but it's kind of interesting. So we went with it
Yeah.
purely on the idea that what he was doing was, we didn't quite understand it, but it was
Uh,
kind of interesting, you know.
yeah.
And really, the whole thing about Buffalo came about because of John's guitar playing, and I'll always give him the credit for that. You
Right.
know, he wasn't schooled in any way as a guitar player. He just banged out these riffs, and you know, we started sort of, after a while, we did get accepted at, you know, bookings here and there, and so we started playing around, and we never had a repertoire, right? We were doing gigs without a repertoire. What we would do is we would do what we would do jamming with in our rehearsal studios.
Yeah.
John would bang out a riff that he'd sort of worked out at home,
Yeah.
and we'd just jam on them. And I would get up there as the singer, and I'd make the words up as
You'd
we
ad
went
lib.
along.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just whatever came into my head. And you know, this is, you know, the early 70s was the end of the psychedelic era. Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
we might have been a bit later in Australia than you were in America, but nonetheless, we were moving away from the psychedelic side of things. But still, long jams,
Yes.
stone jams were still a thing. So we got away with that. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the noise that we were making wasn't the same as all the bands that were getting gigs around, which were basically pop bands, you know, pretty boys and pop bands. And we were always the outsiders, you know. Wow, you know, would you let your daughters go out with those blokes, you know? In fact, that was a headline on one story about us.
Yeah.
But you know, so we that's what we did. And you know, Dead Forever, that album was basically recorded like that.
Like that.
A lot of
Yeah.
that stuff we made up in the studio. We walked in, John had a riff, we'd start
Yeah.
jamming. I'd whack
Yeah.
down some lyrics. Oh, that's all right.
Right.
Hit
Right.
stop.
Yeah.
Do the
I,
fade out there, man.
I think some of the best recordings are live, you know, or done live, you know, and
Well, I agree with
go,
you.
go ahead.
I've
Yeah.
always agreed with you. You
Yeah.
know, I don't like the whole process of
Right.
recording piecemeal. I think it's fraudulent. Okay,
Right. Right.
it's telling a story which is not true, and I can smell that. Okay,
Yeah.
I can smell it.
Yeah.
You know, and growing up and starting recording in the 70s in Australia, especially, and I'm sure it was the same in America, was the time when multi-track recording became the norm. Okay, we went from the first recordings we made were just on 2-track machines, you know, and then it went 4-track, then it was 8-track, then it was 16, 24. It goes on and on. And you know, and what happened at that time was that the process became more important than the product. Okay,
Yes. Yes.
it wasn't about, you know, you go into a studio. Work with engineers, God love them, who were
Uh,
so in love with their equipment and using it all that they
yeah.
forgot what
Yeah.
the point of that equipment was.
Right.
You know, they were more
It was like
interested in playing with the gear than
it
hey,
was.
play
Yeah.
music here, brother.
It was like a new toy. It was like a new
Yeah,
toy. You know?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, and it's still
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Greg, you know, it is, you know, with the digital stuff, you know,
Right. Right.
people now can do it in their bedroom. But you
Oh,
know,
I know. I know.
this is not real music, man. It really
No.
isn't. It's some sort of ersatz. No, I
Yeah.
don't know what it is, you know.
Yes.
But you know, the most recent recording I've done, it I've now become more of a guitar player. So I have a trio that I do a lot of work with around, you know, Sydney, uh, percussion, and a bass player myself. Of course, I take lead singing as well. That's my gig. But you know, we went into a studio, and my associates, the bass player and the percussionist, did not believe that we could do this. I said, look, we're going to go and record what we do, and we're going to do it all live. No overdubs, no messing around. We're just going to play it and record it. Oh man, oh gee, that's a bit of a chance. But you know, it worked, and it's always worked for me. Pete Wells was the same. He
Yeah.
would go into the studio when he, you know, after Rose Tattoo, for instance, which was a band that
Yeah.
Pete created. When that finished for him, he had a solo career, and he would go into the studio with his song ideas, okay, call up his mates to come and play with him, and not tell them what he was going to do until they started recording. Well, he would say, "This is in the key of blah, okay? Are you ready? 1, 2, 3," and he would make a recording. Now that is what it's about, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, it's a group of guys playing together, making music together, feeding off each other, not taking each part. I've heard of stories about one very big English heavy rock band that recorded the guitar parts one string at a time. I won't name them.
I believe it. I believe
because
it.
name and shame. I don't want to name and shame, but they're one of the biggest bands in the world. Okay, they spent months making a record. Months.
Right.
Guitar parts one string at a time. What?
Yeah.
Where's the soul in this?
Where's the soul? Where's the soul?
Where's the humanity here? Where is those little surprises that happen? You might call them mistakes, the glitches, the things that go. It's like the beauty queen with a mole on her cheek. Okay, that mole defines something. Okay, makes it more than just a bland face.
Right. And
I think that's music to me.
Yeah, and I think like you talked about the live and all that, the whole organic process is what it's about.
Yes. You know, people are musicians, especially here, I'm sure it's the same in America, they're all really anxious about AI, okay, and what it can do to music. And with good reason. But, you know, you should not be afraid of it. It doesn't matter. All you're going to do is ignore it. That's all. Just ignore it. Who cares? I don't care how many million, quillion copies of a bloody single they sell that was made by AI. I want to see that AI walk onto a stage and work up a sweat in front of a bunch of people. Okay? Show me that. Show me that. If that AI can do that, then I'm going to start worrying. But it can't.
Well said,
mate, get up there.
No.
Bang, 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 bang. Work up a sweat.
Right.
Give them your heart and your soul. And that's what this is about, you know. Really, that's the whole idea. Give them your heart and soul.
Yeah.
And they will give theirs back to you.
Give it back, you know. I think music is the highest art form. I mean, I love other art forms as well, but I think music is just the top. Yeah. I think it's just like you said, because of your whole being, you put that into it, and it comes through the music, and then touching the audience and connecting, making that connection. You know, that's what it's about. Yeah.
Well, you know, we are learning through this, the science, which is, you know, starting to realize now that everything is made out of vibrations. Everything. Right?
Yes.
The cosmic whole is made from vibrations, from things coming together and vibrating together. And this is the art music is the only thing that we have that comes close to being part of that, really being part of that, you know.
And the whole healing properties and the therapy through music, and the using both sides of the brain, all of that. Yeah, all of that.
All of that stuff, man. You know, you know, you and I, we are only a conglomeration of vibrations. That's the truth. You know, and you know, music taps into that, and it's a way of expressing that. You know, we're only now starting to really understand the truth of those things.
Yes, agree. Well, I want to get back to the Dead Forever. Despite commercial radio blacklisting the band, the album sold well. Proof that even
I'm now pointing at a gold record hanging on the wall up there, man.
Yeah, it's proof that even negative advertising is good advertising. See?
Well, we knew from very early, Greg, that if you wanted to, you know, in those days, people would go to a record store. Okay, the racks and racks and racks of records. You know, people go through them, and you know, if you want somebody to pick up your record and look at it, it's got to have something on it, on the cover that makes them go, gee, what's this? I better have a look, you know, and then they'll listen, right?
That's right.
You know, and you know, controversy worked for us. It
Right.
worked against us as well because it meant that mass media would not accept us. All right, but
Yeah.
the kids, the people out there that buy records, they accepted us, and that's why I've got a gold record hanging on the wall.
Right. Well, and the other thing, whose idea was it to put the words "play loud" on the cover?
I think it was probably somebody in the art department of the record company because, you know, uh, our music was very loud and he took it very literally, you know, and it became a sort of a thing on all the album covers.
Yeah.
Play this one louder, play this one even louder.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
It's silly, you know, but you know, the thing is, you know, you picked up on that even now.
Right, right. You know, then the last one said, "Blow out your speakers." You know,
That's right. That's it. Yeah, yeah.
go buy new speakers.
I've had people tell me quite seriously that they've done that.
They've done that. Well, it is interesting how at the time both the follow-up Volcanic Rock and 1974's Only Want You for Your Body were banned in certain stores because of the album covers.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah. But you know, in Queensland, which is where Pete and I, you know, migrated from, Queensland was always a very, you know, a very conservative state, still is. But you know, record stores up there, they would sell the records, but they would only present them in a brown paper bag.
Okay. Okay. Uh-huh. Yeah.
You can't buy that kind of publicity, man.
You know, and it's interesting looking now on the internet. One of I think Volcanic Rock is still edited in on certain sites. You can't see the cover, but Only
Yeah.
Want You for Your Body, I think they're showing the actual covers now. You know.
Well, you know, Greg, I'm doing a show on July the 20th here in Sydney, which is the 50th anniversary of the release of Only Want You for Your Body. Okay. And you know the album cover? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
The venue is a club. It's a bowling club, believe it or not, which is you know, quite a big auditorium in it. And so I had posters made up for this event, okay? And I featured the artwork from the Only Want You for Your Body album on the
Okay.
poster. So, and I delivered the posters to the venue. All right.
Yeah.
Here you go, guys, you know, stick those up. And I drove past there about a week ago and none of our posters were up. And I thought, what? We're playing there soon. So I called up the, you know, the entertainment manager there. What's going on? You know, oh yeah, well, I put the posters up, but we had complaints from all the members. We had to take them down.
Oh
so,
my God.
so I had to
Oh
get some
my.
new posters made with a very with a different completely image on them, you know, completely. But now I've got all these posters left over. So tell all your listeners to contact me through Facebook, and I'll be happy to sell them to them. They're collector's items.
Oh my
See,
God.
we're still the outsiders, man.
Yeah, as much as things change,
They
they
stay
stay
the
the
same.
same. They stay
That's
the
right.
same, don't they? Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay. Well,
I thought we were past all that shit, you know.
yeah. Speaking of Volcanic Rock, many
Yeah.
feel that that's the band's best work. How do you feel about that album?
Well, I can understand why they would think that, you know. I think really that Volcanic Rock was the first time that we actually really crystallized the Buffalo sound properly and recorded it, you know, as that. Dead Forever, even though it's the only one that actually I've got a gold record for. Um, it was groundbreaking, but it wasn't really focused. You know, there was we did a number of things there which weren't as focused as you know, the Volcanic Rock album is much more focused, but still retained a certain amount of the anarchy from the earlier stuff. Only Want You for Your Body continued crystallizing things that we managed to sort of crystallize, you know, formalize in Volcanic Rock. But to me, it lost a little bit of the spontaneity. It became a little bit too too well done. Okay.
I can hear that. I can, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Not in a bad,
and
not in a bad way, but I
no,
know,
no,
no,
no, no, no, no. I don't think it's
yeah,
a bad thing at all.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I understand completely why people think the volcanic rock is the ultimate one. Um, you know, I it's difficult for me personally to choose a favorite.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, and I find that with everything that I've done over the years, because really, if you're true to yourself, and I try to be, then what you're doing at each period of your life is doing what means the most to you and what you feel most the best about, and so each one of them is is like and now I think I have a total of about 16 or 17 albums I've recorded, something like that, in different situations and different bands, and every one of them is important in its own way to me. It's like saying, how many children do you have? I have 5 children. Which one is your favorite?
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. Can you actually make that decision?
Right. That's right.
You,
Yeah.
you, you know,
Well,
because go on.
you're the school of thought that it's a each album was a product of its time.
Of course.
So you would never even think to go back and say, well, I could have redone that song a little bit better, or I could have, written this a little bit, or I could have sang better. It was what it was at that time.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's funny because the Buffalo albums,
yeah,
uh, when I when the band came to its inevitable end, and I moved back to England for a while, at that point, I had recorded the final Buffalo album, and I never saw it go into production. Okay, um, I left before that was released, and but from that point on, I never listened to any Buffalo stuff ever again.
yeah,
And it's only now, and in fact, this started back in about 2014, where I've really re-listened to that stuff. Because once I've done something, I don't need to listen to it anymore. It's
yeah,
done. And like I say, I don't want to change anything. It
yeah,
is there. It is. The child is born. You
yeah,
cannot now turn that little boy child into a girl child.
yeah. Amen,
Well, no,
amen
no,
to
they will tell you differently now, of
that. They're
course.
trying.
But
They're trying.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's a thing of the moment, as you say. It's the best I could do at that point, and it's the thing that I wanted to do at that point, and I respect that. It's like Pete Wells always said to me, you know, when you're doing a gig, nobody's perfect. All right, everybody makes mistakes. Now you can either let that escape, let that mistake then define that moment for you, or you can move on. You know, uh, and if you do make a mistake, don't make it obvious to people. Okay, don't say, "Oh no, gee whiz,"
Right.
no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, that's terrible. Okay, what you
Yeah.
do is you made the mistake, play it again. Now it's part of the arrangement.
There you go. That's right. That's right. I meant to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
There
that's better.
you
Oh,
go.
oh, yeah, do it again. Yeah. Smile at the people, and everything's
Yeah.
cool.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
good.
yeah. But as you say, getting back to that point, it's a thing of the moment. I mean, I've made many other albums since. 3 albums with the Count Bishops and various other things. And each time when I've done it, apart from playing those things live, of course, for a period of time, I don't go back to it again. It's done.
Put it to bed. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's well, I wanted to ask you about some stories on tour.
A few years back, BB King was touring in Australia. He was touring with U2. They came over on a tour, and the guys from U2 attended a show that I was doing in Sydney. Just dropped in, and it turned out that BB King was having his 64th birthday while he was in Sydney, and
Oh,
they asked me if they wanted to have a special party for BB King. So they hired a boat to go out on Sydney Harbour, and they asked me to take my band on to play for
oh,
BB's birthday. Okay. And I got to tell you, what a huge compliment that was, you know, to be asked to do that. And um, and we played a set, you know, we were trawling around the harbour there, and BB, we took us a bit of a break, and BB King came over and he said, you guys play pretty good, man. He says, would you mind if I sit in with you for a while? And I said to him, I said, I don't know, man, can you play? And we had a laugh, together. You know what I mean?
And
We
he
had a
laughed
laugh.
about that.
Right? Yeah, and we ended up jamming for half an hour or so. You know, just playing some
That's
blues stuff,
that's
and I had a bit of a chat with him, and what a huge talented man he is. He was, you know, a wonderful man, and he was so humble. You know, no arrogance, no, just like talking to your mate. You know, talking to your friend, sharing a few stories. You know, and one of the things that he said was that his horn section, most of the guys in his band had been with him ever since he started out after leaving the Merchant Navy. Okay. Now, what does that tell you about a man? What does that tell you about him? You know,
yeah,
uh,
right.
you see, you know, and yet there are guys who think they're the God's gift to the world,
Yeah,
uh, and will continually tell you so.
yeah.
And you wouldn't want to share a beer with them.
No,
You know what I mean?
no. You know, that what a huge compliment he paid you and you guys wanting to sit in with you, you know, like that
Oh
too.
yeah.
You know, I mean, but like you said, I mean, let the music speak, you know, through you. It speaks through you, and you don't have to draw attention to yourself, you know. But yeah,
No,
that's
people will
will
come to you.
gravitate. They will
Well, that's right.
naturally.
You know,
That's right.
like I say, it was his birthday. He didn't know that was going to happen. That whole thing was going to happen.
Yeah,
They brought him down in a car to
yeah.
the wharf, telling him that they were taking him on a fishing trip. And so he got in the boat, and he was like, "Wow," you know. And as we went around the harbour, we pulled into one area where uh, a fireworks display went off just as it was getting dark. Okay, this big firework went off, and he thought that was laid on for him. Okay, it wasn't. It just happened to be going on. But he sat on the deck with tears streaming down his face. Okay, he was so overcome with emotion about it, thinking that this had all been laid on. And of course, nobody told him it wasn't. You know, but you know, that was the kind of fella he was. You know what I mean? He had his heart on his sleeve all the time. You know, and that's what I hope people will say about me sometime.
Well, Dave, talk a little bit about 1976's Mother's Choice. It seemed like it
Yeah.
had the band moving in a little more commercial hard rock direction.
Yes. Well, you picked it there, Greg. You know, like all things, bands tend to hopefully evolve as we go along. You know,
Yeah,
now which I suppose we were attempting that, but really those kind of moves which we made after the third album, um, Only Want You for Your Body, were really driven by our management and record company, who were both really annoyed that we weren't, you know, getting a lot of radio. In fact, we got hardly any radio airplay. We made no commercial singles, and really, you know, that was the band's philosophy. We really didn't care about that, but you know, we were we'd financed an 8-ton truck, a 15-seater minibus, 3 road crew, a huge PA and lighting system, which we were dragging around the country all the time. And plus, we had a manager, an agent, a publicist, a, a fashion consultant, and it
yeah.
went on, you know. So,
You,
so you know,
you had a.
we were supporting a rather large business concern.
I was going to say
Heavily,
you had a lot of overhead, what they call
a lot
overhead.
of, a lot of, yeah, you got the word there, overhead. and and beside that, we weren't getting as much head as we used to. But that's beside the point. But
Touche, touche.
but anyway, we bowed to what was basically inevitable. Really, we were being weighed down by debt, and finance companies, and the band members were the last ones to ever receive any payment from the work that we're doing. And believe me, we were gigging sometimes 12 shows a week. Can you believe that? 12 shows a week,
That's a lot.
and this went on for about 2 years non-stop.
Right.
Uh, uh, we were exhausted. I mean, I could barely pay my rent most times, but it became necessary to do something to try and alleviate that situation, and this was where our record company and management pushed us. Personally, I was never happy about it, and the truth is that once we made that change, you can't really go back. Your what you once had no longer exists, and that became obvious to me quite quickly. Peter Wells, who was playing bass in Buffalo, and he and I have been working together for the best part of 11 years, including time up in Brisbane. And Peter, lost the faith, and he wanted to move on. And he did after we recorded that album. He had the idea to form Rose Tattoo, who you may have heard of, and he really was keen to move onto playing a slide guitar rather than just bass. Of course, Pete was quite a multi-instrumentalist in many ways. He could play saxophone, keyboards, bass, guitar. He's one of those guys. And he moved on, and I was really, really surprised and shocked when that happened. To be honest with you, for a start, I wondered why he didn't ask me to go with him.
Right.
But of course, he had a different vision, and I respect that. I tried to carry on with myself and Jimmy, the drummer, and once we lost John Baxter, in many ways, the whole sound and attitude of the band changed quite drastically, and we were never going to be a pop band, despite what the record company and the management wanted. Nevertheless, we had to keep going because bills still had to be paid.
Right.
So we drafted in Norm Rouet, who played on that Mother's Choice album with us. And Norm was from a band called Band of Light. He was Norm, an enormously talented slide guitar player, but a very fragile personality. And he didn't survive in Buffalo for very long. The way that we were working almost constantly and the way that we lived was just too much for him to handle, So we lost Norm quite quickly, and I think in many ways that Pete's desire to play slide guitar was really influenced by Norm,
Right.
who was a ridiculously undervalued guitar, slide guitar player, Norm, mainly because he's such a fragile ego, and he's almost like he doesn't really belong in this world, I love the man, and he's so talented, but God, he just kind of disappeared into the background,
It is.
Yeah.
Well, there would be one last album, 1977's Average Rock and Roller.
Yes.
Some
A very apt title.
I was gonna say, you beat me to the punch. That the title was a critique of the album. Yeah.
That's right. Look, God love him. Chris Turner was drafted in on guitar, and Chris was a staple around Sydney, a guitar player. He'd been running his own band before he was asked to join Buffalo, and an enormously competent guitar player and a lovely guy. But we threw him in the deep end, man. The first show he ever did with us. we used to do a thing where, you know, to start a show, the guitar player, whoever he happened to be, and this all started with John Baxter, of course, would start the first song with an enormous cacophony of noise and feedback before he would drop into the riff, you know.
Yeah.
We said to poor old Chris, we said, "Okay, man, get out there, do this." Okay, he was flabbergasted, right? Because he thought it wasn't music. Okay?
Right, right.
He was that kind
Oh,
of player, wonderful player. But you know that was really confronting for him. But, you know, he
yeah.
handled it manfully. But you know, that album, I must tell you, that, you know, the album title was actually Chris's idea, you know, for the
Oh,
title. And at the time, I thought to myself, "Gee, that's a really naff title for an album. My God, what are we saying about ourselves?" You know. But then I thought, you know what? Actually, that's what it is. It's
uh-huh.
just average rock and roll, you know. And I wasn't even around for the release of that album because Paul Balby, who'd been the drummer on the Dead Forever album, he'd moved to England, and hooked up with a bunch of guys over there called the Count Bishops. And he came back to Australia for a holiday and to see his family. And we caught up, of course, you know, because we had a friendship quite apart from playing in a band. And he started talking to me about how the Count Bishops were just signed to a label called Chiswick Records in London, making their first album, and they'd been working as a four-piece for a while, and they really felt the need for, you know, a frontman singer. And
Yeah.
would I consider it? Well, actually, he didn't say would I consider it. What he did was he said, "We're looking for a guy," you know.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there thinking, "Wow, you know, this might be a good thing to do," because I was so disappointed with that last album, you know.
Yeah.
Now there are good things on it. There's some good stuff on it, you know. I can't deny that. But to me, it had lost all focus. It was just, it was kind of meandered along. It was okay, you know. Chris had his chance to shine in a few things, and that was wonderful. Um, but you know, Buffalo uh, dealt a nasty blow to more than one guy, you know, who tried to sort of be part of it. Colin Stead wrote two of the songs that we recorded on those last two albums. One was called Hotel Ladies, and the other one was called Rollin'. And he was a very good songwriter, you know, and he was one of the people that our management wanted to bring into the band to give us a more commercial output, you know. And in fact, he was quite good at writing that sort of stuff. But you know, he did he did two shows with us. We went to Melbourne, did a couple of shows down there, and he was so shocked by what was going on. Then he packed his bags and went home.
He packed them. He packed them.
Yeah. What's happening, man? Oh, I'm out of here, you know. And rock and roll, brother, you know.
Yeah.
But as I say, by the time we sort of finished recording on that fifth album, the Average Rock and Roller album, I was really quite disenchanted with the whole thing. And you know, and when Paul was talking to me about you know, how they were going to be auditioning for singers, I said, "Well, I'm
Yeah.
interested, man.
Yeah.
What about me?"
Right. Well, you know, you guys,
Uh,
I mean, Buffalo had a good run. You guys had a good run. I mean, longer than a lot of bands, you know?
oh yeah, I
So,
know. Yeah. Well,
you know, nothing to be ashamed.
oh,
Yeah, nothing to
oh
regret.
no,
Yeah.
well,
Uh,
no, I have no regret. I have no
yeah.
regrets. But you know,
Yeah.
I'm really quite philosophical about these things because I know, and it's been
Yeah.
taught to me over and over again. I'm
Yeah.
philosophical about it because I know these things are all finite. You know,
Yeah.
people change, attitudes change, the world changes, and you know, we all change as we go along. Um, we get different priorities. You know, sometimes it's a matter of ego or dispute, but you know, things change. It's as simple as
Yeah.
that.
They
And
do.
I'm
Yeah.
quite relaxed about that these days. I'm
Okay.
going through a change at this very moment. In fact, I've just spent the last 3.5 years working in a trio situation where I've been, you know, obviously the singer, and
Yeah.
I'm playing guitar and I play harmonica as well. And it just so happens that I've written most of the bloody songs we play, blah blah blah. And I wanted to do something different, which is what I did with the trio, with a percussionist rather than a drummer, and a bass player myself. But now that's coming to an end. The bass player has a family issue that he can't avoid dealing with. Doesn't have the time. My percussionist is about to go overseas for a couple of months. But luckily, I have other people who are hanging around for the opportunity to come along and join the Dave Tice party, and so I might be able to carry on anyway.
Okay.
One of the things that the guys that I've been working with initially found very challenging was that I don't work out a set list. I don't necessarily stay with the same arrangement for every song even. I just bloody well play and let it happen. And both of them were a little bit concerned about that because they hadn't done that before, But, I took a cue from this really from working with Pete Wells. I always go back to Pete Wells because been such a big influence on me and my attitudes and how I work. He always used to say that not necessarily say, but when he was doing his solo stuff, for instance, he would go into the studio with a bunch of musicians that he wanted to record with, but not even tell them what songs he was going to do. Yeah. Wouldn't present the song ideas to them until he said, "This one is in the key of A, B, or whatever it happened to be, and it'll be about this tempo, and away we go." Right. Right. So, and they would have to follow him, and I understand that because you reach a stage where if you're doing something which is so heavily based on yourself, and I say that and that applies to me now, and I'm not saying it out of an egotistical point of view, but it's because I know what I want to do. Okay. Once upon a time, what I wanted to do was very much reliant on what the people around me wanted to do. Okay. We started out as like a little gang, okay, of mates. This is how it starts, and you make music together, you start playing together, and everybody has the same what's going on. But as things go along, you end up in situations where that's not true anymore. I've had a number of bands together now over the last few years, and every time, even though I didn't want it to be so, the name of the band or the name of the act always includes my name. Yeah. I don't, and I've never wanted that to be the case. Okay. But unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, that's the way things have turned out. Because, for want of a better word, I have over the years become known in certain areas and gathered some notoriety. So people think, well, we get more gigs if we use that bloke's name. Okay. Right. Now, as it happens, we don't get that many more gigs, but still, but nonetheless, that's the way it ends up.
You carry a lot of weight in the music industry. Go ahead and fess up to it.
Well, okay, fair enough. Well, but you see that when you say carry a lot of weight, that also implies a burden, and it is a burden, and part of that burden is that if I'm going to continue to maintain some credibility, then whatever I do has to be credible and presentable.
Right.
So that means that I have to be in control of my own situation. Okay. I no longer am interested in other people telling me or advising me or saying that I should do this or I ought to do that. Stuff that up your backside, okay? Right. Because if I mess up and I've made those decisions, then that's my problem. Okay.
It's on you. It's on you. Yeah.
It's on me. Okay. But I don't want other people putting those on me. So I end up almost invariably, without really wanting to, I would love to have collaborators with equal input, equals standing and credibility to work with. But unfortunately, what I generally end up with is players who want to play with Dave. All right.
Right.
So you understand what I'm saying here, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I got you.
I really miss that.
Yeah.
That camaraderie, okay, that we had, especially we lost it towards the end of Buffalo, but we really had a camaraderie there, you know, and there was nobody saying, you know, it's all about me. It was all about the band. It was all about the band and what we were doing, not something bigger than yourself.
There you
know,
go.
I think all of us, you know, in life,
right.
We all tend to look for that, you know, whether it's God, religion, whatever you want to do, politics, for God's sake, you know. But we all look for something bigger and more important than just ourselves.
Bigger than yourself, yes.
Yeah, that's right.
You said
and I mess it up. But nonetheless, I'm in this position now. For God's sake, I'm not a child anymore, you know. And you know, I learned long ago that if I don't look after myself, nobody else. Because, you know, we'll do it because, you know, we all are interested in our own opinions, in our own desires and aims, you know. Managers, agents, they all have their own. You know.
Well, did you feel a sense of camaraderie when you were in the Count Bishop situation?
Yes, you know, when I was amazed that I was actually accepted into the band to start with. I mean, I was in Australia, they were in England, and I thought to myself, wow, you know, here you go, Paul, take some of these recordings that I've done here back with you and play it for the guys. And I thought that would be the end of it, okay? Because for God's sake, are you really going to import a guy from Australia when who knows how many great singers there are wandering around London, you know, looking for a gig? So, but nonetheless, you know, to my amazement, they said, "Oh, we'll come along and join the band." And I went there, and the first thing that happened was I was picked up at Heathrow by the guys, and that was the first time I met the rest of the band, apart from Paul, who I already knew. And we drove back towards London, and in the Ford Transit van. And the first thing they did halfway back to the city was they stopped at this pub, and we went into the pub for a beer, you know, and they plonked this warm English beer in front of me. In Australia, we drink our beer cold, okay, but over there. You know, and I said, well, if you're going to be in the band, you've got to learn to like this. And it was real ale, you know, it was heavily hops infused. It was nice beer, but anyway, so we had that. And then I went and I stayed for a couple of days at Paul's place with him and his girlfriend. And within 36 hours of getting off the plane, I was in the studio recording all the vocals on the band's first album, and I did that in 2-3 hour sessions. Okay, reading from the bits of paper, you know. We finished laying down the vocals for the tracks that they recorded, and the producer Vic Mail said, "But guys, I don't think we've got quite enough stuff here for an album. We need one more song." And so we had a bit of a chat about it, and at this point, I'd never even rehearsed with a band. You know, I just got in the studio, laid down the vocals. And so we had a chat about it, and somebody said, "I know. Why don't we do that song, Taste and Try, which I think is an old, you know, Peter Green, Fleetwood Mac thing. I'm not sure.
Maybe
I'm not sure. But anyway, that's just a guess on my part. But nonetheless, so we just jammed that once through. I somehow, maybe somebody knew the lyrics. I got the lyrics, and we put that down live, and that was the final track on the album. But you know, and then a couple of days after that, we started actually rehearsing. You know, putting together, you know, a show basically. And I remember being at the second rehearsal, thinking to myself, because the band, you know, look, Buffalo, which is what I'd come from, really, we thought that we were quite progressive in many ways, okay, especially for that period of time when we were doing it, and I had a certain degree of pride in that idea that we were like that. We were some steps ahead of most of what was going on in Australia, that's for sure, and when I joined the Count Bishops and we started rehearsing, I suddenly realized that what we were doing was very much in the vein of 1960s R&B, okay, and I thought, man, I've maybe I've made a mistake here, I've kind of gone backwards.
Yeah.
And I had, I had to deal with that, because
Yeah.
it really it concerned me. I thought, man, what, but
Yeah.
the truth of the matter is that, when I originally started out doing music, it was
Yeah.
because I loved blues. I loved
Yeah.
it, and Pete and I were really, invested in that idea. Buffalo took us away from the straight blues stuff,
Yeah.
and I rediscovered a joy and pleasure in doing that sort of music,
Yeah.
and and there really was. I felt that I discovered after a little while being there with these boys that we had something that approached the sort of camaraderie that I'd felt I needed, and we did, we did it tough, man. It wasn't
Yeah.
like, I turned up in England and joined a recording band and suddenly the world opened and the money started flowing. It wasn't like that at all, I mean, I ended up doing various jobs for a while around London, and that's something I hadn't had to do when I was doing Buffalo,
One of your influences was the Strangeloves. And the Seeds was another American band. In fact, you guys covered
Yep,
I Want Candy," and that
that's
was
right.
several years before Bow Wow Wow made a big hit with it. The
Yep.
English band. Yeah.
We had all kinds of opportunities, we were we did Top of the Pops. You may be aware of that. We ended up
Yeah.
doing Top of the Pops, and
Yeah.
our version of I Want Candy got into the top 40 for a brief period of time in England.
Yes.
But you know,
Yeah.
the band's demise was completely down to the fact that we lost Zen on de Fleur.
Right.
Our rhythm guitar player,
Right.
died in a car accident.
Car accident. Right.
And yeah, well, Zen, some all bands tend to coalesce around one or two people.
Yeah.
Some people, most people you can change around to some
Yeah.
degree, but there's always a core which you cannot.
Right.
And Zen was that in the Count Bishops. Okay, he was he was the man. Really simple. Okay, he was the man. He ran the books. He looked after the bookings. He wrote a lot of the songs. He set the pattern for our approach on stage. I mean, we were very much sort of on the edge of that punk era, although we weren't a punk band.
Right.
We were
Right.
more in the sort. We
Yeah.
were more part of the sort of R&B
Right. Well,
revolution that was going
what
on at the time.
what's been said is, and I agree with it, is that you kind of bridge the gap between like the Dr. Feelgood sound and then like Eddie and the Hot Rods. The more
Yeah, yeah,
oncoming punk sound. Yeah. So you're in between,
yeah.
kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think the whole band, we were all R&B blues enthusiasts. I mean, Dr. Feelgood were, of course, as well, but
Yeah.
they sort of jumped on the horse a little bit before we did.
Yeah.
But we were doing quite well. We just recorded our third album. We did, the first album when I just got to England, and then we recorded a live album at a show at the Roundhouse in London, which went very well. And then the third album was in the can, and we just had the success that we'd had with I Want Candy.
Yeah.
And a 30-date tour was booked all around the UK to support the release of the upcoming album, which is the Crosscuts album. And we did 2 shows in London as a warm-up thing for that tour. Zen, as was his wont, got well and truly stonkered. Okay, he got well and truly drunk on the second show. Uh, Zen loved to drink, but you know, he was one of those guys that could drink 3 or 4 pints of beer, and nothing would change. And then he'd have halfway through the fifth one, he would turn into this monster. You know, he would just go
Okay.
completely flip.
Like,
Okay.
yeah.
And that was one of those nights. We had a huge night at the Nashville Room in London. He went to a party afterwards where 3 of his current girlfriends were all there at the same time.
Oh, that's not a good scene. No.
Not a good thing. There was some angst happened, I believe.
Yeah, I would think
He
so.
he had a few drinks to cover his dismay. He'd not long taken ownership of an Aston Martin DB4 Vantage, right, like the original James Bond car, okay, which he was very proud of. And he left the party, got halfway home, and had a serious accident. Okay, a huge shock for us, and it really knocked the band for 6. We tried to carry on. You know, we did a few shows around London with a good friend who was a great rhythm guitar player from Blast Furnace and the Heat Waves over there.
Yeah.
And we actually did a visit to Spain where we were supposed to play 3 huge festivals over there. With the Stranglers and Hetty and the Hot Rods. Now, there's a story around it, man. You need longer to get the story of that one.
But I will say that the
yes,
Stranglers
anyway,
I will say the Stranglers are one of my all-time favorite bands, so I will say that. But
yeah, well, yeah, I can tell you a couple of hair-raising stories about that tour, that little tour, which only lasted out of 3 shows, we only did one. Okay, it's too long a story.
Were the Headhunters a nod back to your band Head?
Yeah. Well, you know, up until when the Count Bishops came to an end, Johnny, our guitar player, lead guitar player, ended up joining Dr. Feelgood. And a couple of the songs that he and I had put together with plans to record for the Count Bishops ended up being recorded by Dr. Feelgood, which I'm rather proud of, to be honest with you. But I stayed in England for a few years after the end of the Count Bishops, and I worked with a band called the Cobras. We never recorded, although we did record some rehearsals, which I've still got a copy of, which is fantastic. And it was with Jippy Mayo was the guitar player in that. Now, if you know Dr. Feelgood, you know Jippy Mayo was the guitar player who took Wilco's place. Great guitar player, man. But so I did work with those guys for a while, and we did shows around London. And then after a while, I thought, you know, man, I'm getting tired of these winters. I got sick and tired of being cold, you know. So I thought I'll go back to Australia, which I did in 1984. And I decided at that point that even though I'd been a frontman singer, I really wanted to have more input on the musical side of whatever band I was going to be in. So I wanted to turn myself into a guitar player, you know, which I did. You know, because when you're just a singer, however the band happens to play on the night, you're completely at the mercy of the band, you know. And one of the things that I noticed when I got back to Australia was that the prevalence among guitar players, every guitar player wanted to be the next Eric Clapton or the next Jimi Hendrix or something. You know, they all wanted to be flash guitar players. And there seemed to be a lack of interest in actually playing rhythm guitar. Now, to me, rock and roll is all about the rhythm section. Okay, it's not. I don't care how many notes you can fit into the next 30 seconds. Okay, it's like a meal. You know, if you go to a restaurant and you want a meal, you want some meat and potatoes there. You don't want just a gravy, do you? Okay.
Right. Yeah. It's the backbone. It's the backbone. The rhythm section is the back. Yeah.
That's right. You know, and a rhythm guitar player can have a large influence on that situation. And in many ways, that's the way I've continued to work. You know, I lead with my rhythm guitar. All right.
Yeah.
I set the tempos. I set the feels, because that's the only way that I can be certain that the feels that I'm going to get are the ones that I want to hear. You know,
Yeah.
now that may sound egotistical or arrogant, but it's just the truth. You know, you know,
you know what you want. You know what you want. You know the sound that you
that's right.
want. Right. And that's not egotistical in any. I think a lot of people mistake that for that, you know, in anything in life, you know. No, you just know what you like and what you want.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I live and die by that, you know, and not by somebody else's you know, inabilities or problems. You know, I mean, I'll give you the advantage. I did a thing once. Pete Wells was doing a show here in Sydney, and you know, he had his little band, and he said, "Oh, Dave, you know, we're doing this gig at this place. Why don't you come along? You know, get up and do a song." I said, "Oh, great, thanks for the invitation." You know, anyway, so I went along, and you know, they did a few songs, and then Pete, "Hey, Dave, you know, can I get up here?" So I get up there, and I said, "Well, if I'm going to do it, you know, I need to play a bit of rhythm guitar as well." You know, so I got up with the guitar, and I started in with a Bo Diddley feel, right? You know, shaving a haircut, 2 bits. You know? Okay, and I've started it off like that, and the drummer came in, and I thought, "What is this bloke playing?" He was completely, he was in the wrong place in the beat, and playing I don't know what. And I tried to get his eye. Okay, I tried to get him to take some notice of what I was doing. Anyway, he didn't get the message. Okay, so I just said stop.
Yeah.
I stopped the whole thing. And I turned around and I said, listen, you see this? This is what you do. And he looked at me. It was like a rabbit in the headlights. Okay. but you see, this is what I'm talking about. You know.
Yeah.
Obviously, this guy wasn't a bad drummer. You know, he was a good drummer, but he wasn't paying attention, right? You know, hey, wait, pay attention, man. So that's why, you know, it's now got to the stage where I do what I do. You know, I start things off.
Yeah.
And you know, and half the time, as I say, we don't, or I don't, you know, necessarily stick to a set list. I just call them as I feel it, and I just start the bloody songs and join on in, improv from there on. You know, and you know, to me, this really is what blues and rock music should be. Okay, you know, turning that into sort of rigid arrangements, and closing off the avenues for self-expression within that format is wrong.
Right.
And too many guys seem to they lose faith unless they have that rigid road to follow.
Right. Structure. They need structure. Yeah.
They need structure. Yeah. Now, you know, I mean, I agree with structure up to a certain point, you know, but you have to leave room. You've got to leave room in there. Everybody must leave room for each other. Okay.
Right.
You know, otherwise, what are you doing here? You know, is this just here for you? Is this what it's all about? That's not it. You know, the songs are not an excuse to have a big wank. Okay.
Right.
And show off. What you do with your instrument should serve this piece of music.
Yeah.
The music doesn't serve you.
No.
You serve the music.
It's the other way. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Well,
that's my philosophy.
Yeah. That's your story, and you're sticking to it, right? Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we
Tell me
we
I'm wrong.
talked briefly earlier about AC/DC, and here they return. How did you and ex AC/DC bassist Mark Evans hook up and start playing together?
Well, really, that came about through the Headhunters, initially,
Okay.
because when I got back from England and started sort of thinking about doing guitar, I hooked up with Mick Cox. Now, Mick Cox was the other guitar player in Rose Tattoo.
Okay.
He'd just come back from America, or he'd been touring with Heaven. I was just back from the UK, and we hooked up. We had mutual friends. We knew each other a bit, and so we started jamming in Mick's basement, and he had a friend who was a drummer who used to come and sit in with us, and eventually Mark, who was a friend of Mick's, also came down. So we had a little band going, banging away in Mick's basement until the neighbours got the shits with us and told us to shut up. At which point we went to the corner pub not far from where Mick was living, that had a big room at the back that was not being used, and we asked them if they would mind if we used that room to sort of just rehearse and jam, and the publican said, yeah, you can do that. He said, as long as I'm allowed to let people in. so what started out as just a bunch of friends, and this is the best way to start a band, man, completely organically,
Right. Yeah.
just a bunch of friends who just wanted to make some music together and just jam. And so we agreed that we would do that, and he could bring people in, let people into the room if he wanted, as long as he supplied us with a bottle of scotch every time. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say you needed some compensation. You needed some kind of compensation. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that's what happened. He agreed to that, and before we knew what was happening, the place used to fill up, and we ended up doing 3 nights a week there. Okay,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
getting paid as well. So and that was the start of the Headhunters. Of course, the lineup of that changed. It was almost like a rotating turnstile or something. Different people came in and out of it until we eventually ended up with a lineup that was really, really strong. And we recorded an album with that lineup. And Mark and I, even though Mark wasn't in the final recording version of the Headhunters, he'd gone off to do other bits and pieces. Um, the Headhunters came to a bit of an end. What Mark had been doing came to an end, and we just hooked up. And what happened initially was the Mick Cox was asked by this pub in Bondi, which is a Sydney suburb, to do an acoustic duo gig. Okay, and he didn't know who to do it with, so he called me. And he said, Dave, I've got this pub, we want to pay us this money to do, would you be interested? So I said, oh, well, okay. So I bought an acoustic guitar, and so did he. And we did a number of shows, regular Sunday thing for a couple of months or so at this pub. And then we started getting off at other things. I mean, I don't know, we didn't try, it just sort of happened.
Just happened.
And then, yeah, and then there was one thing that came up that and Mick wasn't around. He'd sort of, I don't know, gone walkabouts or something, and the people that were running the venue were desperate to get us to go and do it. And I got a phone call from Mark, who said, look, the people down here, they've been trying to get hold of you and Mick to do this gig, but nobody can find Mick. And I tried to find him. Mick was he's a funny character too. So anyway, I knew Mark as a bass player, but he said to me at the time, he said, well, look, if you want to do this gig, Dave, I'll do it with you. And I said, what, can you play guitar as well? He said, yeah. In fact, Mark started out as a guitar player. So we started doing this, believe it or not, the first gig we did together was in a Chinese restaurant. Okay.
Is that right?
Which, yeah, which we paid, we got paid really well playing. But it seemed strange to me because hardly anybody went there. We hardly ever saw any. The only people that ate there was us. And I thought, what's going on here? What's going on here? And it turned out that, in fact, despite it being a Chinese restaurant, it was actually a front for the Banditos Bikie Club.
Oh, was it? Was it? Okay. Okay.
So,
Uh,
so there we were. There we were, getting $400 each a night, playing to an empty room, and all these people you'd be coming in the back door and disappearing up down the road later. So we were a musical camouflage.
Camouflage. Did you see a lot of leather jackets, that kind of thing?
Yes, well, the thing about it is that some people might find that whole idea rather challenging, but
Yeah.
the Headhunters and other bands that I've played in, including with the duo, I've done many bikie shows, many.
Yeah.
Banditos, Comancheros, Hell's Angels, you name them. We've done them for these different bike clubs. Things have changed now in all those clubs. The whole vibe of those bike clubs has changed a lot. When we were doing them, they were not full-on criminal enterprises, okay, but now they are, and the people that infest them are a completely different type of person, okay, and I mean, I still keep a friendship with a number of bikers that I knew from back in those days, because they're really good, solid guys. They're really good people. Scary, but they're good people.
I was just going to ask you about Buffalo Revisited. Did that start out as like a reunion group?
No.
Okay.
In fact, between you and me and your listening audience, I came across a few problems from ex-members when I started doing that, which are no longer a problem. Okay, but it would have been nice if we could have done a proper reunion. But I've continued working in this business and making music non-stop, whereas the guys that I'm talking about basically haven't played for 40 odd years. Okay. They've, gone with a different kind of life now, to do a reunion with people who, God love them, are nice people, but haven't played for years requires a hell of a lot of work. And I know who would carry that work. Okay. I know who would have to be the one cracking the whip and doing all that stuff. And I don't want to do that. I've never wanted to do that. And in fact, it was never my intention to do what has become Buffalo Revisited. All right. I never liked the idea for a start. I think it's like trading on old glories. But life has its realities. And one of those is the necessity to put food on the table. And when somebody says to me, Dave, gee, I wish you would do some of those songs, and would you please come at my festival? And here's what I'm prepared to pay you. And that figure, which they're prepared to pay, makes me go, I can cover quite a few bills for that little amount. Then it's very hard to say no. And that's exactly what happened, there was an attempt. There's a magazine who were having some big celebrations a few years before I started doing the Buffalo Revisited thing. And they approached me with the suggestion that they would love to have Buffalo, a reformed Buffalo, perform at their big occasion. Okay. And at the time, I said, well, I thought, do I really want to do this? So I said, okay, well, I want it meant going to Melbourne for a start. I said, well, okay, I'll need all expenses, accommodation, and $20,000 in my hand. Okay. And they said, okay.
And you said, wow, I should have asked for more.
That's exactly what I thought. Okay, exactly what I thought. But but the thing about it is that what I did was at that point, because I hadn't spoken to, say, John Baxter or Jimmy Economo, the guitar player and a drummer. And so I immediately said, look, guys, I've got this offer on the table. Blah, blah, blah. This is the gig. Now, the magazine was called Vice, all right? And Jimmy immediately was keen to do it. But John, who'd since leaving the band had become a Seventh-day Adventist, couldn't do a gig on a Saturday, all right? And he thought that a band called Vice was probably a porn magazine and went right against his religious thinking, okay? So I ended up having to turn down a $20,000 offer because blah, blah, blah. All right. And that immediately soured me to the idea of ever trying to do that again. I don't have time for fiddling around with people who can't bloody, you know. I said to John, I said, man, come on. What's wrong? What's wrong with doing a gig on a Saturday night? Oh, Saturday, it's our Sabbath, you know. I said, well, can't you get some sort of dispensation from your church to come and do one show? No, 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 no. So I said, well, okay. I guess I won't call you again, you know. And it's unfortunate, you know, but as I say, I avoided the idea of revisiting the Buffalo stuff for a long time. It seemed undignified to me in some ways. You know, when you've got something that people think of very highly and treasure, the last thing you want to do is spoil that for them.
Yes.
Okay. I don't want to disappoint people, you know, but when the money gets to a point that you can no longer really say no, then I'm afraid that, you know, reality takes its course. And I knew that locally I could source players that were capable of playing that music. So I threw a band together, and we did it. We did this festival, okay, here in Sydney, co-headline this festival. Amazing. Anyway, before I knew what was happening, all of a sudden, all these other offers started floating in, you know, and I tried to keep it really under control because I really don't want to spend my life revisiting that stuff. But even now, money talks, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does talk. Yeah. Yeah.
And you know,
pretty loudly. Pretty loudly.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. Well, you know, look, I'm a realist, you know, Greg, but I must say to you that we have a show coming up on July the 20th here in Sydney, which is to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the release of the Only Want You for Your Body album.
Wow.
And I fully intend that this will be the last one. You know, it's like I'm treading water or something. You know, and I can't tread water. I mean, I told you I'm 73 now.
Yeah.
And I still have a lot of things that I'd like to, you know, play, express, whatever. And they don't include playing stuff that I wrote 50, 60 years ago. What I would like to say, Greg, is that I've enjoyed talking with you. Okay,
Yeah.
for a start, let me say that. You know, it's a pleasure to meet you, and you know, thank you for listening to the tales of this aging old rock and roller. I appreciate it. But you know, to me, I feel personally that I've been blessed. You know, because I started out in this only because really I thought, what a great way to pick girls up. Okay. And and I thought any job that has girls screaming and throwing themselves at you got to be a good job. And but I discovered very quickly that in fact it felt like I was meant to do it. Okay.
Yeah.
And I hoped that that would be the case for as long as I was still able to walk around and get up on stage. A lifetime's work, you might say. I thought, I want this to be my lifetime's work. I doubted that I would ever be able to achieve that. But it seems, as I now fully enter my dotage, that in fact I may have achieved that. And that's very satisfying to me, you know. I don't know if I've said it before, but you know, one phrase that always keeps me going is the thing about music. It hasn't always put food on the table, but it's never failed to feed my soul. You know, and
Right.
you
Very
know,
good.
it's like the old saying as well about, you know, if you love your work, if you love your job, you'll never work a day in your life, and that's true for me. For me, I mean, I've done other jobs to fill in the gaps between income, you know,
Right.
but but it's never failed me. You know, music has never failed me, and you know, I know that it can't last forever.
Yeah.
You know, fads change. Look, you know, what the sort of music that I make isn't the current flavor of the month, you know, and but I don't care, you know, I really don't care about that stuff. I've never really been enamored of the idea of fame or celebrity. I don't care about that crap, you know what I mean? It's all smoke and mirrors. And you know, great fame in some ways is a death sentence to me. It seems to me, you know, it's killed too many people. If you get too famous, the the distractions are too big. There are too many temptations,
Yeah.
uh, and you know, you can lose yourself in that stuff.
Yeah.
And
It goes to your head. It goes to your head. Yeah.
yeah,
So much.
you get lost in that. You can get lost in that. You know what I mean? And you know, you start believing
Yeah.
in the crap that people say about you. You know,
Yeah.
and that's a death sentence, man. It really is. It kills you. You know, one way
Right.
or another. Maybe
Right.
not physically always, but it kills you
The
as an artist, I believe.
the
You know,
the
you
cult of personality, you know, and all of that, all that
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, look, I can say this in all honesty, you know, that I continually have people tell me things like, Dave, you're a legend. All right. And, you know, it's all very flattering, but I refuse to accept that idea. You know, it just seems to me, you know, look, I'm the son of a farmer, a farm laborer who got lucky. That's all, you know, and I can look
Well,
at a life that has filled me with joy and
yeah.
satisfaction, a few challenges, more than a few, but none
Yeah.
of it do I regret.
Wait.
You know, I personally enjoy meeting people. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I like most about what I do is that when you go into a venue and you play music and there are people there, you're all sharing something kind of special. And that doesn't happen if it's just the musician, right? There has to be an audience.
That's right.
You have to try at least to create some sort of community for that
Right.
period of time.
Right.
And you know, when I started out in this game, I was very cautious about speaking to an audience in between songs. So I try and avoid it. Okay. But now I spend a lot of time talking to an audience, right? Sometimes too much. Okay. But you know, to me, the idea that there's some kind of separation here which
Yeah.
cannot be crossed,
Yeah.
that's bullshit, man.
Right.
That's really wrong, you know.
Yeah.
If we're not supplying this special connection to people, then
Right.
we're
Connect.
not doing our
That,
job, you know,
that's
because you know, most people spend their lives in jobs and where they have no freedom, where they have to they're doing things they don't love, and they need a respite from that. Okay.
right. That's right.
And this is what we're supposed to supply.
All right. Well, I will send you this once I get. Takes me a week or so usually. I'll do it on one weekend, and then the following weekend I do the editing. So see what I
No
can kind of
worries.
shape it up a little bit, and then send you a copy of it, and you can post it and tell
Well,
everybody.
if you let me have if you let me have a link that I can send out to all the people that I know
That's what
in
I do.
Australia,
That's
I'll put
that's
it out on my
exactly what
Facebook and all that stuff. Yeah, beautiful.
that's
We'll do that.
exactly what I do. All right. All the best to you. Okay. And
Yeah, you too.
keep on. All right. Keep on pressing on. All right. That's all you can do.
There ain't no turning back now, brother.
No, no turning back. It's got to come out. All right,
That's it.
Dave. All right.
Sleep well, mate.
All right.